It was a latter-day miracle, reported the magazine.
It was a latter-day miracle, reported the magazine.
The human voice was speeding from ocean to ocean.
The human voice was speeding from ocean to ocean,
stirring the electric waves from one end of the country to the other.
Steering the electric waves from one end of the country to the other.
The grand finale was a demonstration of Bell's newest and perhaps most astonishing invention yet.
The grand finale was a demonstration of Bell's newest and perhaps most astonishing invention yet.
A wireless telephone.
A wireless telephone.
The ancestor of our mobile phone.
The ancestor of our mobile phone.
Which, by 1916, Bell already had a working prototype. To show it off, Bell mounted what might be called one of history's first multimedia presentations.
Bell mounted what might be called one of history's first multimedia presentations.
Combining radio, the phonograph, the telephone, and the motion picture projector, the most dazzling inventions of the early 20th century.
Combining radio, the phonograph, the telephone, and the motion picture projector, the most dazzling inventions of the early 20th century.
Miles away,
in
a radio station in Arlington, a record player began the Star-Spangled Banner.
The Star-Spangled Banner.
The sound came wirelessly to the Willard Banquet Hall over the
the 800
receivers, while a motion picture projector beamed a waving Old Glory onto a screen.
The
combination of sight and sound brought the guests to their feet with hearts beating fast, souls aflame with patriotism, and minds staggered. AT&T, it seemed, had powers to rival
the gods.
Perhaps never before in the history of
civilization,
opined National Geographic, had there been such an impressive illustration of the development and power
of the development
power of the human mind over mundane matter,
and power of the human mind over mundane matter.
It may seem a bit incongruous to begin a book whose ultimate concern is the
ultimate concern
future of information
is the future of information,
with a portrait of Theodore Vail, the greatest monopolist in the history of the information industry, basking in the glories of the nation's most vital communications network,
basking in the glories of the nation's most vital communications network under his absolute control.
Under his absolute control. After all, these are far different times.
After all, these are far different times.
Our own most important network,
Our own most important network,
the Internet,
the internet,
would seem to be the antithesis of
would seem to be the antithesis
Vail's Bell system,
of Vail Bell system,
diffusely organized,
diffusely organized,
even chaotic,
even chaotic,
where his was centrally controlled,
where his was centrally controlled,
open to all users and content,
open to all users and content,
voice, data, video, and so on.
voice, data, video, and so on.
The Internet is the property of no one,
The internet is the property of no one,
where the Bell system belonged to a private corporation.
where the Bell system belongs to a private corporation.
Indeed, thanks mainly to this open character of the
Indeed, thanks mainly to this open character of the internet,
Internet, it has become a commonplace of the early 21st century that in
it has become commonplace of the early 21st century that
matters of culture and
in matters of culture and communications,
communications, ours is a time without precedent,
ours is a time without precedent
outside history.
outside history.
Today, information zips around the nation
Today, information zips around the nation
and around the globe
and around the globe
at the speed of light,
at the speed of light,
more or less at the will of
more or less at the will of anyone who would send it.
anyone who would send it. How could anything be the same after the Internet revolution? In such a time, an information despot like
How could anything be the same after the internet revolution? In such a time, an information despot like Vail might well seem antediluvian.
Vail might well seem antediluvian. Yet, when we look carefully at the 20th century,
Yet, when we look carefully at the 20th century,
we soon find that the Internet wasn't the first information
we soon find that the internet wasn't the first information
technology supposed
technology supposed
to have changed everything
to have changed everything forever.
forever. We see, in fact, a succession
We see, in fact, a succession of optimistic
and open media,
and open media,
each of which in time became a
each of which in time became
closed and controlled industry
a closed and controlled industry
like Vail's.
like Wales.
Again and again in the past 100 years,
Again and again in the past 100 years,
the radical change promised by new ways to
the radical change promised by new ways to receive information
receive information has seemed, if anything, more dramatic than it does today.
more dramatic than it does today.
Thanks to radio,
Thanks to radio,
predicted Nikola Tesla, one of the fathers of commercial electricity, in
predict Nikola Tesla, one of the fathers of commercial electricity,
1904,
in 1904,
the entire Earth will be converted into a huge brain as
the entire Earth will be converted in a huge brain,
as it were,
capable of response in every one of its parts.
The invention of film,
The invention of film,
wrote W.D. Griffith in the
wrote D.W. Griffith
1920s,
in the 1920s,
that children in the public schools will be taught practically everything by
Children in the public school will be taught practically everything
moving pictures. Certainly they will never be obliged to
by moving picture. Certainly, they will never be obliged to read history again.
read history again. In 1970, a Sloan Foundation report compared the advent of cable television to that of movable type.
In 1970, a Sloan Foundation report compared the advent of cable television to that of movable type.
The revolution now in sight may be nothing less.
The revolution now in sight may be nothing less.
It may conceivably be more.
It may conceivably be more.
As a character in Tom Stoppard's The Invention of Love,
As a character in Tom Stoppard's The Invention of Love,
set in 1876,
set in 1876, remarks,
every age thinks it's the modern age.
every age thinks it's the modern age.
But this one really is.
But this one really is.
Each of these inventions to end all inventions,
Each of these inventions to end all inventions in time
passed through a phase of revolutionary novelty and
pass through phase of revolutionary novelty and youthful utopianism.
Each would change our lives,
Each would change our lives,
to be sure, but not the nature of our existence.
but not the nature of our existence.
For whatever social transformation any of them might have effected,
For whatever social transformation any of them might have affected,
in the end,
each would take its place to uphold the social.
It was a latter-day miracle, reported the magazine. The human voice